in your attention, the city councilman has your attention, y'all might as well use it. So if there are any other questions that you all might have, whether it be about politics or East-West Divide or a particular vote I've taken or some of the challenges that I've made, I was telling Mary Ann, I was telling Mary Ann here that when I ran for office and now that I'm in office, my job is not to do what I think is going to get me reelected. My job is to move the city forward and move this city forward based on the best information available to me. And sometimes the decisions that I make are not going to be popular. And sometimes the decisions that I make, some people are going to question. For example, we've talked about a police auditor, having a police auditor to monitor the police department. Well, I need to be honest with you all, that never made a whole lot of sense to me. Because I think if you mobilize your community and you engage your people become the police officers. They will be the ones that will tell us when we have bad officers. They will be the ones that will tell us when we have officers that have acted inappropriately. They will be the ones to do it. And if you have an effective police chief and an effective city council, and more particularly an effective city councilman in District 2 and some of the other areas where there are significant claims of police brutality. If we mobilize our community, if we build our neighborhoods, if we make our neighborhoods understand the power and the responsibility that neighborhoods have, they will in turn become the police officers. And we won't have to spend $250,000 or $300,000 a year trying to figure out whether a police officer actually did this, that, or the other, because people in the community are going to know better than anybody. And so I was opposed to it. I didn't think it needed to be in the budget. A lot of my colleagues and a lot of my friends who are African American and Latino American took issue with me on that. But at the end of the day, I think based on what we've seen recently, we have proven that if the community gets involved, we can solve the problems of violence, and we can solve the problems of police brutality. This police chief, with the involvement of the community, has fired more police officers in his small time in office than the last 3 police chiefs combined. What does that say? That says if you got a community that is active, you got a community that is active, a police chief who cares and understands, and a community that is willing to go the distance to solve its problems, we will save our community. Any questions you all might have, I'd be glad to answer them if you have. Jeff?
Over there.
Yep. She was first. She was first. Yes, ma'am. The one city, one school district. The learning community is in its 3rd year, so prior to that, 4 years ago, was the one city, one school district fight, if you want to call it that. Jeff?
I'm a lifelong resident of Omaha, and there is a discussion about it.
Yes, there is.
Absolutely. Interesting to get the background on it, because I was not aware of that. But I'm curious, being on the council, does the council agree that there's a divide? I know you do, but what about the other members?
The council members east of 72nd do. The council members west of 72nd are not so sure. But yeah, but all the council members east of 72nd recognize that there's an east-west divide.
Could you say more about how it actually affects people?
How it actually affects people?
Yeah, not just in terms of attitudes.
Well, it affects people in a number of ways because, for example, you know, here's how it affects people. I talked about taxes early on, and I talked about raising taxes early on, and one of the reasons why I did that. The reason why I supported a tax increase is because if you don't increase taxes, you almost, and people, when I first said this, people said, what is he talking about? But if you don't raise taxes, then you all but guarantee that poor people stay poor. You all but guarantee. Because, and the reason why that is because if you don't, Then you have to cut services. What services are cut first? Libraries. Y'all name them. Y'all know what they are. Parks, swimming pools, all school. When you cut, so when you don't raise taxes, you almost guarantee, you all but guarantee that poor people stay poor. That's why I did it. Because you look at the landscape and you see, and the fact of the matter is that in our part of the city, where home ownership is not quite what it should be in the eastern part of the city, and where what you have almost all home ownership in the western part of the city, with the exception of some apartments and so forth. What you have is a tax base that has primarily left the inner city and has moved out somewhere else. And when they move out somewhere else, they've got all of the streets taken care of the way they want, the neighborhoods taken care of the way they want, the gated communities taken care of the way they want. So why would they want taxes raised? Why would they want to do that? But you guarantee that if you don't do it, you all but guarantee that poor people stay poor. You would increase class sizes in terms of school districts and so forth. That's the reason. That's one of the effects. When you talk about what happens, that's one of the effects of what happens when you do that sort of, when you create this east-west divide. John?
I was going to